So, welcome to the Bleeding Keyboard. With me today, I have got S J Dawson, who I will refer to as Sam for most of this because I've not got the ability to remember to say SJ all the time. Sam, thank you for being here. Which genre do you write in, and how do you define that genre?
Thank you for inviting me. I write in different genres. Predominantly, I started children's books. I've then moved on to more adult fiction, doing horror and historical fiction. I also write in drama, doing screenwriting and playwriting.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
To define it, I think it's very difficult to define genre, other than obviously prose, poetry, and drama. But within that, there's sub genres. I say with children's, I would say that my books are fantasy as well as being children's stories. So a lot of the genres kind of intermix with each other.
I think you're right there. One of the awkward things is when you write children's fiction and then you sort of like try to differentiate it and say an adult fiction, there's automatically that connotation that, oh, it's adult fiction.
Yes.
What you mean is it's sort of like it's content that's more suited for a mature audience, but not necessarily sexually explicit. Is that fair?
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think there is an awful lot of overlap. Especially when you look at children's writing, like, say, Jacqueline Wilson, where there's a very gritty, realistic verisimilitude to the stories, and other children's stories, say, for example, Roald Dahl, where there is that ridiculous fantasy element in there. Since as you've got unicorns and rainbows in yours, I think you're definitely in the fantasy area.
Definitely. Escapism.
Nothing wrong with escapism, though. So, what's your writing schedule?
Oh, due to obviously my health issues, I do try and do some writing every day, but it's not always possible. But obviously, with doing the degree, that's been my focus. So I've not been able to do an awful lot of writing other than for my degree. But other than that, normally I would tend to write first thing in the morning. My brain seems to be that way. I kind of wake up in the morning, get an idea, and I've got to get it down. Otherwise, you lose it.
Yeah, it's kind of fun being an early bird, though, isn't it? Before everybody else gets up, and yeah, when you've got the house to yourself.
Yeah, not when it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to get up and not wake my husband. Yeah, that's not good.
Oh, he won't mind. He'll know that it's for the important reason of writing a story. Yeah. Yeah, you stamp around as much as you like, Sam will say. Yeah. Which is most important to you? Is it plot or character?
Character.
How come?
Well, obviously, you can't have a story without a plot. So plot is important, but characters drive plots. And quite often, I mean, at the moment, I'm writing my historical novel, and I had laid out all the different characters, and characters just walking scenes that weren't there. So things have to change. You can plan things as much as you want, but as you start writing, characters decide where things go quite often.
I've heard this from a few writers. Do you think this is a sign that we've all got the same mental illness?
I think you've got to have a mental illness to write anyway.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm being facetious here on this point, but I honestly don't understand how we can sort of like we can differentiate between plot and character, and we can think, right, well, the plot has got to be point A, point B, point C, point D. I'm going to have a character with this personality who's going to go from A to B, and then stuff me, a new character is turned up there, and they're having a party, and this is important for me to write. It does seem so anomalous to the organisation of when we're trying to get between 50 and 80,000 words down in a complete story.
That's it. I mean, I had my character, my main character in the novel should have been Catherine,
Right.
daughter, and then Eleanor, who is her mother, is the one that's coming out as being the stronger character, and she's almost taken over as being the main protagonist.
And yeah, I love that shrug at the end, as if, what can you do? They're just characters, yeah. What piece of writing advice would you give to anybody who's just starting out?
Always keep a notepad close by or something that you can record onto, because you think of things and if you don't write them down, you forget them. The other thing is just to write. Don't worry about it being perfect. Even if you're struggling to find the right word, write a word that's the same and just go back to it. Otherwise, you struggle with the what's the word I'm looking for?
Productivity, the flow, the
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if you're conscious about everything being grammatically correct and formatted and using exactly the right words, you just use your flow, really. So just write, then go back to it at the editing stage and make it perfect.
When you said before, always keep a notepad, is this the voice of experience because you've lost great ideas? Because how good was it?
You know, you never know. It's when I'm walking the dog quite often, my brain, because I tend to dream things or think things out before I write them down.
Right.
So again, at the moment, I'm writing a war scene, and so I'm thinking it out, and they're retreating, and suddenly another character just comes up with a little child that's lost both the parents, and so the captain picks him up and takes them with him. I don't know what's going to happen to that character now, what's going to happen to the little boy.
Yeah, definitely need a notepad just to keep track of all these. This is why my characters are so grumpy and insular. That way they're not going to do something nice and helpful like that.
I always find when people say, "Oh, it's really lonely being a writer," and I think, no, it's not, because you've got all these different characters going on in your brain, so it's not lonely.
Yeah, there is that, isn't it? And also, usually they're people that we like, or we can sort of like send them on a redemptive arc or a redemptive journey.
Yeah, or kill them off if you don't like.
Well, that took a dark turn, didn't it? Yeah. Sam, who do you read for pleasure?
Tess Gerritsen is my main person. I don't tend to have any favourites. I tend to pick books up, read the back of them. If I like what it sounds like, I read the first kind of page. If I like how it's written, I'll pick it up and read it. But Tess Gerritsen is my main that I'll read.
Tess Gerritsen is somebody who you hear there's a new release and whoosh, you're out there, yes?
Yeah.
So yeah, you go through the blurb on the back then.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you've written novels and you know how difficult it is to actually produce that blurb on the back. Are you thinking that when you're reading the blurb on the back, or are you just thinking, sell it to me?
Maybe not right now. Sorry.
That's all right.
I did this yesterday as well. I was recording something, the phone went off. Sorry, where were we?
I was just asking, when you're reading the blurb on the back, are you thinking just sell it to me, or are you thinking, my God, they really have to work hard to craft this piece, so this is a piece of sales text?
Yes, I do now, after doing my degree.
Right.
I never used to, I just used to read it. If it sounded interesting, then as I say, I tend to read the first few lines because some people, I don't enjoy how they write.
Yeah, I get that.
So I need to read a little bit on the front first and see how I like it. And then if I like that, then I'll go ahead and buy it or pick it up from the library.
I mean, I'm with you on not liking the way some people write. so many people rave about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and I know that they're incredibly popular, but it's just, to my tastes, it's so overwritten. And even though I keep trying to get into them, yeah, can't.
Yeah, no, I've watched the films. My husband's read the books, I haven't.
I know some people who go back to the books practically every other year as well, saying, "Oh, I'm going to have to read them again." And it's just, do you hate yourself that much? Your children's book series, Rainbow Dust, is aimed at 5 to 8 year olds. What precautions do you take to make sure you're addressing them at an appropriate level?
Hand on heart, I don't do an awful lot really, other than not swear. Because when I wrote the first book, Rainbow Dust, it was never supposed to be for public consumption. I wrote it for myself.
Right.
And I kind of do the same thing with the others. I'm a child at heart, really, and I love being taken on magical adventures. So I kind of write them for myself. And I don't really believe in writing down to children. So although the stories are simple, and I don't use obviously big words that they're not going to understand, I'm not cautious about what I do. I do use some words, some bigger words, because I think if they're enjoying the story, they don't realise they're learning. So I do put in an odd word that they may not have come across.
And yeah, and I fully agree with this whole idea of not talking down to children. It's somewhat condescending, really, and I think some of the worst fiction. Speaking as somebody who teaches creative writing, when somebody says, "Oh, I've written this for children," and it's sort of like, "Well, this is a very good boy," and you can just see that it's incredibly condescending.
Yes.
I don't think kids need that.
No, definitely not.
So again, going back to the Rainbow Dust series, these titles have involved you working with an illustrator. What challenges does a writer face when they're working with an illustrator?
Several. I guess it depends on the author. I visualize as I'm writing.
Right.
So I know exactly what I wanted my books to be like, which is why I went down the self-publishing route. Because obviously if you go down the traditional route, it's handed over, it's not your baby anymore. They choose how it's illustrated, how they deal with it. And I didn't want to do that. So the first illustrator was a bit hard work. They kind of think because that's their job, they decide how they want to do it. And no, it's my book. I know how I want it illustrated and what I want illustrated. So that was hard, and she didn't quite get me. Second illustrator was a lot better. She kind of got me straight away. So I'd say I want this, that, and the other. She'd go away, do a sketch, but yeah, that's perfect. So it kind of depends, really.
So this is because, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, and I'm not trying to insult you, but would you say then you're a control freak and you're something of a perfectionist?
Possibly.
Right. Again, not meant in a negative way at all. Yeah, you're the auteur of what you're producing here, so you're making sure that it's the exact product that you want. So there is nothing wrong with being in control of that. So it's kind of difficult to. So was it? I don't want this to sound like we're being unkind towards the first illustrator, but was it that the first illustrator? Was it that you weren't expressing yourself clearly for that first illustrator, or the first illustrator wasn't picking up on the points that you wanted?
Wasn't picking up on the points I was making. She'd obviously got her own set idea of how she wanted to do it, and she wasn't picking up. Didn't listen, basically. There was several illustrations which she came back with, and it's like, no, that's not what we want. I mean, something simple like Jessica looked up and Lucy was almost nose to nose with her.
Right.
Because she had them at the back of her head. Like, why would you do that? She just didn't, I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah, maddening. So yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. it's been a while since I've worked with an illustrator, and yeah, it's just interesting to hear of other people's experiences. So yeah, right. So I know you've also been writing some fiction that's aimed at a more mature audience. Does this bring about a different set of challenges from writing for a younger audience?
The only challenge I found really is my children's books I write in present tense,
Right.
and most novels are past tense. And I end up flipping, I forget, and I end up writing in present tense. So I've got to go back and change it up. That's my main issue.
That's kind of interesting. I've never even thought that children's books lent themselves to present tense and mature fiction.
Yeah, because, well, with children, obviously they live for the moment. And with writing it in the present tense, they feel that they're part of the story at that present time. Whereas obviously novels have always traditionally been written in the past tense.
Yeah, I know. When I picked up, I think it was the Hunger Games. I enjoyed the Hunger Games, but they're written in the present tense and set in the future, and that was messing with my head an awful lot. Which doesn't take much to mess with my head, really. But I know with some of the things that you've written, especially stuff that you've written for the Horror Society, I mean, that scared the hell out of me, and had me sort of like needing to turn the lights on when I go from one room to another in the house, which in this day and age of excessive electricity bills, I'll be
I want to be doing.
yeah, I'll be sending the bill to you. Yeah. So this means that your imagination is going from sort of like the pleasant fantasy place of rainbows and unicorns to the sinister dark place of things that happen in, yeah, above pubs. Are you comfortable with your imagination stretching across these boundaries? And yeah, I mean the historical stuff that you're writing as well.
Yeah, I enjoy the fact that I can go from, fluffy unicorns to the dark side. And the historic, I love history anyway, and I love research. So they kind of go together with historical fiction, don't they?
Yeah.
The only problem is I tend to procrastinate because I love the research so much. It comes to a stage, it's like, right, you've got to leave the research behind and actually start writing.
Yes, yeah, that's the maddening thing sometimes, isn't it? When, especially when the research is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So, as we've mentioned a couple of times, you're currently studying English at higher education level. Do you think that a better knowledge of the subject has helped to improve your writing?
Yes, definitely.
Um, do you find it's increased the speed of what you're producing, or do you find you're slower now because of it? Do you find you're second guessing yourself and thinking, "Oh well, how's this going to be perceived?"
Yeah. It's my writing's better for it, but I analyse things far too much now. So it takes me longer to do it.
Yeah, it's swings and roundabouts, isn't it? There's part of you that's there thinking, well, this is far more intelligent, but also it's taken me 3 hours longer to yeah. Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. But yeah, over analyzing, it's never a bad thing. Sam, what are you currently working on, and where can we find more of your work?
I'm currently working on my novel Stealthful Manor, which I'm using for my dissertation.
Brilliant.
I've been editing it, and due to feedback from somebody not so far from me now, I've written a different chapter one.
Excellent.
And I'm just writing now the first Battle of Mons. So I'm working on that one at the moment, and you can find all my books on my website, which is sjdawsonauthor.co.uk.
Right, I will put a link down below so that people can find your stuff. I'm really looking forward to reading Stamford Manor and seeing how that battle goes. And yeah, Sam, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.